anything up until that point.
Did I hear Mark say something?
Yes, he hadn't heard anything except.
Let me start over.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard nothing except any discussion. That's all I heard, Michael.
It's not acting right here. Let me try it again. All right, I'm going to start again, Mark. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, he gave you a thumbs up.
Okay. It is April 23rd. This is the April meeting of the Sullivan County School Board. The meeting is now called to order. The first item is the contract renewal for Dr. Cox. I'm making the recommendation, and I'm looking for a second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Jones seconds the motion. Now the floor is open for discussion. I think everyone has a copy of it, but the floor is now open for discussion.
I have one question. The only thing that I have is a copy of the amendment. I don't have a copy of the actual contract. The amendment that I have addresses the contract, but I don't have it.
Did you hear him? Yeah, it's the same one as last year.
I mean, it's got to have some changes with contract dates and other things, but if we don't have the contract in front of us.
The contract date changes the term from June the 30th to 2024. Pat, are you on?
The only change in the contract would be the 4-year extension date to June 2024. Other conditions in the contract remain the same, including the salary, with the provision that any pay raise that teachers get, he would also get that same percentage. So nothing has changed except the extension on that, and then clarification on the moving expenses.
Okay, because what we're reading, what was sent out is basically saying that we're going to cancel the old contract, start a new contract, and these are some changes on it. But if we don't have a copy of the contract we're voting on, I don't see how we can vote it.
The only changes in the contract.
The only changes in the contract are the end date and a clarification on moving expenses, and everything else is exactly the same as the other contract.
Is there a need for it to be fast? Because, I mean, I don't see he's only been employed for 7 months, so I don't see why we're in a hurry to hurry up and get a new contract put together. And if it's not a need to hurry, can we get a contract put together so that we can all see it before we vote?
Well, I want to say something.
I've seen the previous contract, so I don't understand what the argument is.
Right. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, other than timing, Mr. Arson, it's the same contract to clarify moving expenses and to extend it. And as was discussed in the work session to the same question, part of that is because of what we've seen with local area school systems and changes in directors, as well as how I believe the whole board feels about Dr. Cox's performance, which I thought you echoed in the work session as being outstanding. And so I get where you're coming from about it not being an attachment, but we've had this link to the email for a week now, and it's the same contract. So if there's an objection that you have as to why we shouldn't extend Dr. Cox's contract, I'd be welcome to hear about that. Otherwise, I think we're trying to solidify the things we discussed in the work session and to lock up somebody that we think has done a very good job in, especially during what are unprecedented times for everybody right now.
Oh, I'm definitely not saying he's done a bad job. I like the job that he's doing. I just don't understand the rush to change something when we still have him under contract for 3 years and 8 months to say that we're going to hurry up and do this. I mean, I get it. I mean, to pay the moving expenses, but to say we're going to redo the entire contract, I don't know. I just don't understand why we're doing that so fast.
I don't think that's an accurate statement, though. If you could explain it better, I would be glad to hear it. But we're not redoing the whole contract. As Mr. Gilmore said, as Mr. Hughes said, as I said, this is the same contract. It is an extension or renewal of the contract and clarifying the moving expenses.
It is an actual brand new contract,
With the exact same terms, Mr. Arson.
but it is still a new contract. So
Well, actually, it's a renewal of the existing contract. So it is just a renewal of the existing one. So I guess it's a matter of semantics. I probably wouldn't say it's a totally new contract. It's, of course, the contract is the one that the board has already voted on when he was hired. So that, that's what we're operating on, and all we're doing is renewing that same agreement. So that's the way I would look at it for an additional year.
I would say this too, is I've reviewed credentials of other candidates in other school systems in our region who have been hiring directors of schools. And while some of those candidates had outstanding credentials, none approach Dr. Cox's. So it's just a show of confidence and to make sure that he's not looking somewhere else. I'm totally in favor of extending it by a year.
if he's looking somewhere else after 8 months, we're already in trouble.
Well, Mr. Arson, I still haven't heard an objection, though, other than you trying to find a motive. And that's where we get in trouble in political positions, in my view, is when we look too much at motives instead of facts.
No, there's really no other objection other than the fact of we're 8 months into a 4-year contract and we're looking to it extended. I'm just trying to figure out maybe it is a motive, but I'm looking at facts of why we're trying to do it. But I understand it's asking the same question, getting the same answer, so I understand.
Well, and to be fair, and I didn't appreciate this till our state mandated training as school board members, but when you look at how difficult it is to recruit high quality individuals for public education and for directors of education, you've sat through the same seminars as me. You've looked at the same statistics. This is pretty common in a school board situation that a contract is renewed. You don't wait till the last second because they might move across country and they have to plan. And so, to echo Mr. Gilmore, and I think your ultimate sentiment that you support Dr. Cox, I think that, at least from my view, that was my understanding why we wanted to go ahead and do that.
Okay, no further comment. Just had to ask the question.
Any other discussion from anyone else on the board? Hearing none, I call the question.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes.
Having completed that, we will next move to approving the agenda. And when we approve the agenda, we also approve the consent agenda and all the items in it, including any previous or special call meetings. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the minutes as they were distributed.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Spivey. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Gilmore. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, and so ordered. I will now turn the meeting over to Dr. Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. So, moving into communication to the board under director's comment, we in the work session heard from Mr. Flannery and Mr. Loach. So we will now proceed to. I wanted to give the board an update on the work that is being done, especially during the COVID-19 period. And before I turn this over, Ms. Nave is navigating this for us, and I'm going to invite members of my senior staff or lead team to update the board, much in the same way that when we have our meetings 3 times a week, that we keep on track with all of the things that are going on. But before I do that, I want to say a very special thank you to all of our staff who have worked so hard to serve the needs of our students in this very difficult time. We have extraordinary people who love our children, and so one of the ways that they show that is in the way that we provide the service to our kids. And so we have so many people that have donated their hours of their time, our staff, our members of our community, to make sure that our kids have been fed. We had to come up almost out of whole cloth with a digital learning platform. And so just so much work has gone on. We've had people scramble to put together ways to issue devices to students. And so I thought it would be worthwhile to spend just a few minutes of this meeting to hear directly from the members of the lead team who actually have led this work. So I'm going to turn that over, and I think we're going to talk first about feeding our students. And so Amber Anderson is up first, who is our school nutrition specialist and supervisor.
Good evening, everyone. So you can see on your screen our slide with just a few bullets that I'm going to go over. Under the emergency feeding, we're allowed to provide more than 1 day's worth of meals at a time to each student. And I just kind of wanted to give you all that information that each time we are serving, each student receives 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches. So just some comparison numbers for you. On the very first meal service day, we served 3,906 meals. On our most recent day, which was Tuesday, April 21st, we served 18,000 meals. So to date, we've served 111,045 total meals, and we've served that in 9 days. And those are combined breakfast and lunch totals. We've provided those meals in only 5 locations with about a total of 60 to 70 employees that we have divided into groups. And that combined total is higher than our normal operation totals. And we are now running 30 buses. You can see the breakdowns by contractor right there. And we have 1,009 students receiving meals by buses. So our team's working hard, and Billy's worked hard with us on buses. And I have to give a shout out to Sarah Akert and Suzanne Bogus and my bookkeeper, Allison, and Melissa Dotson and Carla, because they are really helping me coordinate the buses at each site. So everybody's been working hard, and we're feeding lots of kids.
Good evening, this is Sarah Akert, and I wanted to take this opportunity to share a little bit with you all about the support our families are receiving. As Amber mentioned, we do have 5 feeding sites that we're utilizing, and when we first realized the condition of what was happening in our district, we had literally hours to put together a plan of how we were going to distribute meals to children. So Amber identified the 5 sites, and we began seeking out volunteers. And we established a site called Sullivan Serves, where our employees could go and sign up to be volunteers. On that initial feeding day, we needed 20 employees to help us pack meals, deliver food, and load those into boxes to deliver to families as we were driving to those locations those first few days. Since that initial day, we've grown from needing 20 volunteers a day to requiring 95 volunteers to help us now pack those lunches, deliver meals, but also load those buses and ride buses with our bus drivers. Those 95 volunteers are in addition to the food service individuals that we have working, our bus drivers, and the community volunteers that we have happening. So it's really been a tremendous effort, and it's been amazing to watch our Sullivan County employees come together to support these children. We also have our ELL teachers who identified ELL students. Those are our non-English speaking students who were in need of meals and additional support. So we were able to identify one bus that would serve those ELL children, and a teacher and classroom teachers travel on our food distribution days to those sites, deliver meals to those children, and then are also able to communicate with them and offer them instructional and emotional support on those days. And lastly, I just wanted to highlight the donations that our district has received. We've received Second Harvest food boxes of shelf-stable items, as well as fresh produce to provide our families. Walmart has provided food for us to distribute as well. Food City, Eastman Credit Union, and United Way have partnered together to provide our families with Food City gift certificates. And I also want to highlight our maintenance men. We have 500 boxes of fresh produce arriving. We've had 500 boxes of these shelf-stable items, and our maintenance men have been wonderful to be on site and help us distribute those out to our 5 feeding locations. So just a thank you to all those involved with this.
So in regard to teaching and learning in the elementary schools, I wanted to share 3 different pieces. First of all, curriculum. We are only reteaching standards. So we have found those standards that are most important that will solidify students' skills moving into the next grade level. They are both in printed and online form. We didn't want any children who didn't have access to internet or young children not have access to devices to be at a disadvantage. So everything that's available online has also been printed. They have been built by a team of our teachers and a professional development literacy consultant. Her name is Kate Clever, and Christy Nelson. And Christy Nelson, who is our district literacy coach, K5, she has led the charge. We have now, from our schools have received 21,600 packets of instruction. Each packet is between 20 to 40 pages. The first packet we delivered was after spring break, and it was 2 weeks of content because we didn't really know the direction of the state and the closure pattern. And then the second packet we delivered this past week, and it's actually 1 full month of content to take us to the end of the year. Teachers have received these packets so that they don't have to build curriculum from scratch. They are very appreciative. Many representatives had voice in those packets and helping us make them better. And so teachers are now, adding their magic. So they're taking the train track of the packets and the standards and the teaching, but then they're actually doing the work to connect with students. And as much of the student work is important, they're also making really strong heart connections and supporting children emotionally. So the teachers and leaders have far surpassed, anything you could ever imagine or ask of them. A special shout out to Bill Luttrell and Todd Calkins, who work at Acard Service Center. They have worked feverishly to get these packets together and out to schools. They have just been incredible parts of our team. As far as content, pre-K parents have access to lots of things that will help the whole child development. They're all linked online. And so we've been getting a lot of feedback from teachers that parents are engaged, students are excited and doing some of these activities. In ELA, we thought that we could do some great work around just giving great literature to kids and really focusing in on America. And so our children are learning about colonial times, Americans who were fighting for a cause. 4th grade is doing a novel study on Treasure Island. They're studying about American Indians and the Revolutionary War. So we're excited that we're rallying children around what a great country we have and how we just pull together in crisis. In math, we are working on concepts that they've been taught all year long. And then, I'm sorry, I forgot to put the fourth grade example in there, but for fourth grade, they might have a page on multiplying fractions. And then they would go into iExcel online, which is free, and practice those skills as they wish. In social studies, we're really excited about this work. Celeste Arrowwood from Indian Springs, Christy and I asked her to put together some work for fourth and fifth graders. It's been taught before within fourth and fifth grade, but they're doing a civics unit just to prepare them again to be good citizens. So they're studying about the Constitution and famous Americans and branches of government. And I would not hesitate to say that many adults don't know these important things about American history. So we're excited about their work. And then finally, we have some great digital programs that have been offered. Lots of companies have opened up free access because of the crisis. And so this is our report from this past week, and it shows, even though it's small on the screen, it shows how many pages students have read in MyOn, which is the digital book program that we have. And then they've completed 1,651 books in this third week. That's how many minutes they've read and how many pages they've read. So MyOn is one opportunity. The kids are in there and enjoying the text. And then we have other programs too, like iExcel, which practices math skills, some other opportunities as well, music and art opportunities in PE.
Middle school has been very busy also, just like elementary and high school, and it has been a group effort putting together a curriculum. One of the first things we did was share in advance some expectations of teachers for the remote learning site before it went live, and those things included such things as office hours and instructional or contact time with students, and we instructed teachers to review and reteach grade level standards in the remote learning classrooms, and also give them an opportunity to improve third 9 weeks grades that may help them in their final grade. There's been a lot of planning by our instructional coaches and with our instructional coaches to support teachers in digital learning. Julie Bowers, Marion Graham, Robin Jones have put in many hours working with teachers and working with the supervisors here at Central Office on all grade levels. They're also monitoring and offering guidance as needed for lessons that we have teachers placing Google Drives. And along those same lines, we identified some exemplary educators to develop model lessons, and those are available for teachers to either use as they are, or they can take and modify them to suit their teaching style. Amy Griselle and Eric Maynard have been wonderful in helping teachers with Google Classroom or Google Hangouts. Teacher leaders in the buildings have also reached out to their colleagues to help them. There are printed documents available now for all middle school students that do not have access to the internet for some reason. It may be simply where they live in our counties. We did have some spots that do not have internet, so principals have access to a drive where they can print those off as needed. I have weekly virtual meetings with middle school principals on Tuesdays at 11, and we discuss several things. Each day there's something new that comes up that we have not thought about. Virtual meetings with instructional coaches and teachers as needed. Middle school administrators, they're working hard to monitor student participation and well-being as teachers are delivering lessons or just having those office hours. And if teachers alert the principal or the guidance counselor, they're reaching out and making contact if we have any concerns to see if there's some way we can help that family or that student. Admins are having virtual staff meetings weekly with their staff to stay in contact with them and be sure that remote learning is going as intended. And we recently just had our middle school curriculum meeting for ELA and had a unanimous selection for the upcoming cycle.
Good afternoon, this is Brent Palmer. High school has been doing much of the same thing as elementary and middle school. I will say before we got started in the remote learning area that we've had to get into, there was a lot of teacher collaboration that that was facilitated to prepare and support teachers in their learning through the transition to digital teaching. Central office tech staff, teacher leaders, and tech teachers have all worked with our teachers in the building to move to remote learning. And I just have to add to that, they've been great. They've been wonderful to help, and teachers have put together some incredible lessons as a result of all the help that they've given to each other and from the staff that's helped them to get there. We've continued our connection with our students to the very best of our ability. We've done that through Google Classroom, Google Meet, and through several videos. And to kind of, I guess, reiterate and to kind of expand a little bit, I've seen some really great lessons from our high school teachers. Rebecca Cleek, Tori Hell, and Sharon Lisenby are three teachers that come to mind who've put together some incredible lessons. I've even had the opportunity to see several Sullivan North band students send music performance videos back and forth to their band director. Their music performances were assignments given to them by the band director, Mr. Nick Ruth, and the kids did an incredible job. It was really fun to watch them play. The high school students' classes have continued, except, of course, in an online venue there. And they've continued to review rigorous material, meeting state standards. Administrators at the high school level have been hosting faculty meetings, dropping in on lessons from teachers to encourage them and to support them in their work. And they have also been working on important decisions and information for graduation to honor our high school students and the work that they have done. So that's just a brief sample of what high school has been doing. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Aaron Flannery for a few comments.
Well, I just want to add to that what CTE teachers are doing is reteaching safety, digging deeper, also going over things about work environment, contamination, cross-contamination, just to go along with what we're dealing with the virus. But positive note, really, a really good note is about 50% of our teachers are experiencing 100% participation from their students. So I really feel like that's just doing a really good job reaching out and getting students to stay engaged. And then we're also still on track for all 14 of our dual enrollment students who are going to be graduating, are going to be still on track to graduate from Northeast State. So we're excited about those students graduating and moving forward with them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is Karen Nave. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our remote learning website. This was spearheaded by Dr. Palmer, and it has been a labor of love for all of us who have worked on it. You can see here are just some statistics about the total number of page views, and this is a couple of days old, so I'm going to assume we have more than that, but we have almost 20,000 page views, and probably almost 20% has come specifically from the Pre-K-5 remote learning website. So it's an incredible job, and I'll kind of take you through some of the pieces on this website and part of this process, especially as it relates to people doing online learning and training for this. When we started out, we kind of saw this happening the week before we left for spring break. So we sent out a survey to teachers to start gauging their level of comfortableness with being able to participate and do teacher-driven lessons using Google Classroom. And when we started out, basically only 28.3% of the people said, yes, I use Google Classroom and feel totally comfortable with it. And then 44.1% said, we have never used it. So we knew that we kind of had our work cut out for us. So we had to think about the teacher piece, and then we also had to think about the student piece. One thing I will tell you, I always knew that teachers were amazing people. But after this, I have such much more great respect for them and love for them. They have taken some really big lemons and made some pretty tasty lemonade on this to help support their fellow teachers in this and also help support our students in this. We got together a group of teachers who sat down with myself and Amy Griselle and talked about how do we do a whole process of deploying devices to students, which sometimes takes months to plan, and do it in just a week so we can get these devices into students' hands. So they came together and we did that, and I did update this statistic right here, and it did not show up in the slides, but instead of deploying 1,422 devices, we've actually deployed 1,538 Chromebooks and 112 iPads. So the people that came up with this plan, if you go to our remote learning website, which you can access from our district website, you will see that group of people, and I am incredibly grateful for them. We also wanted to provide tech support, not only for teachers, but for parents and students. So each school gave me a list of 2 or 3 people who are willing to do this endeavor, and their information is on there as well, and I am very proud of those people. Also, on our remote learning website, we have information there that are cheat sheets for students on how to use Google Classroom and information for parents on how do I keep my child safe while I'm online. So that was something that was very important to us. So again, if you visit that website, there is a group of people on there that basically help put together the support site for teachers, which again trained 44% of our teachers who had not used Google Classroom on how to be proficient on Google Classroom, Meet. And again, what an amazing job these people have done. And I also have to throw a shout out to all of my tech people, Amy Grizel, Eric Maynard, Adam Hillman, Mark Lady, and John White for their help as well. As you all know, through this pandemic that we're experiencing now, there has been a lot of people who have not coped well with this, who have really struggled being so isolated. And if you talk to any of our teachers, this has been a real struggle for them in terms of not being able to reach out to their students. And there's always those students that we care about and that we know are kids who look to us for social emotional support and that we want to lay eyes on every day. And this has been really hard for those teachers not to do that. So we did also try to create a social emotional support page for families that gave them lots of information that they could get information on mental health resources, such as crisis lines. As you know, many people have predicted that suicide rates and other things may go up during this time, so we wanted to make sure that we were providing support we needed for families. So we have included information on crisis lines. We have put school counselor information on there. When we did that, we also worked with ENA, who is our internet provider and our phone system, so that we could get an app called ENA Go for all of our counselors, so they can make calls from their cell phones and it actually looks like it's coming from their school number. And also people can call their school number and it will actually ring to this app so that there is open lines of communication for school counselors. I know our school counselors have been elementary and middle providing some lessons and some check-ins, even doing some counseling sessions with students. Our high school people have been incredibly focused on getting students registered for next school year in their classes and also helping to ensure that our seniors are getting the support they need to graduate. We are also able to keep some of our frontier health counselors, and you can see there that we have at least a minimum 120 students that are being monitored each week from our frontier health people. And again, this information is up there so parents can contact or contact these and be able to have somebody to talk to. Also, we have emotional wellness resources on there. We also have community resources on there, college and career information, and then just general information about contacts for people in Sullivan County Schools should they need to reach any of us, because principals and lead team are also using the ENA Go app. So if they call that main school number, it rings to that app and somebody is monitoring that phone. And also anybody that calls lead team, we have that going to our telephones so that we can stay in the loop and be able to support people throughout this. Again, I just give a huge shout out to teachers, counselors, and tech staff, teacher leaders, and I'm just very grateful for the way that people have come together to support all needs of our students.
Hello, everybody. This is Wendell Smith. So even though this COVID-19 has really changed things, some of the things we do in our department still has to have that personal touch that has to be done from our office. So the ladies from employee benefits in our office are working in the office at certain times to address those things, that some of the things on these bullet points, such as continue to make sure that we accept retirement payments for the benefits that they continue to receive. Also, we have to reconcile monthly their dental health and life insurance. So shout out to Tina Dade and Paula Durham and Mary Elliott for taking care of this. A lot of things they can do from home, but there's a lot of things that still has to be done at the office, and they will continue to come in and do that. Also, I am continuing to work with teachers whose license runs out on August the 31st of 2020. Right now, we're down to just a very few people who have not got their license renewed. The state has stepped in, though. Those folks whose license runs out in 8/31 2020 will be extended for 1 year because of the COVID-19. So some people will get a 1 year reprieve, and theirs won't be due until 8/31 of 2021. In particular, the teachers we're talking about here are those who have a practitioner license and who need to advance their license to professional, so they will get a year extension on that. I have been in contact with those teachers there, and so we'll continue to work through the license process, and if we can, we will try to renew it before that date is over, but if they do have the extension, if they do need it. The next thing that we've been working on, this will be presented to you all at the next board meeting. I will give it out to you earlier, but it's the tenure applications. We'll do our traditional board presentation in May. Right now we have 27 applications, and I can say we have 21 approvals now, and that's current. And I have another one who's turned in the remainder of their stuff to me this afternoon that I'm going through. So I'm very excited about the folks who will be going through tenure in the process. This is a pretty lengthy process, but that paperwork will be out there for you all to view. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. We are now in our office starting to evaluate retirements and resignations and non-renewals so that we can do our staffing projections for the 2020 and 21 school year. We want to make sure that we're staffing those areas of need, and we'll continue to evaluate this information as it continues to come in. We still have people contacting our office in regards to either resigning or retiring. Right now, we have a couple things going on in the athletics world. We are trying to develop the volleyball and football schedules, even though we still have a lot of uncertainty about practice and what's going to happen in regards to that. When the high schools will be released to have summer workouts, and just what schedules look like, if there'll be any changes that occur due to all that's happened with us here lately. Also, schools, as they decline in population, or that they can be moved from different divisions. And so this year I'm working with Bluntville Middle School, who has been traditionally into the AA, and we are trying to certify them into single A. Which would be changing their schedules, changing when they go to the playoffs and playing different teams. And we have worked with TWSAA on this, and we have passed the first reading, and it looks like they is going to be approved and finalized. So Bluntville Middle next year will be stepping down in their classification. It says certification, it's actually classification. And last, which we've been doing, and that's hosting online interviews for the 2020-21 positions. They are different, but what we've seen so far, we've had some really good interviews. One that kind of lays into us particularly is the ones we did last week in math. We are looking for high school math positions. This is an area that's hard to fill. So we've taken an aggressive approach this year, and we're trying to fill some of those high school positions now. In fact, I've been on talking even during this meeting to some of the candidates this evening about positions that we were offering them. So we'll continue to do the online interviews. our principals have done a great job with this, and I really appreciate Mr. Palmer, who's really worked with me a lot on this right here, and we'll continue to do the online interviews as the need comes.
Okay, I want to say again how much I appreciate all of the work that's been led by our lead team and for our leaders in our schools, and thanks to our teachers, our food service folks, our maintenance folks, and all the Sullivan County public school family that has worked so hard during all of this time. And thank you, Ms. Nave, for helping guide us through that. At our next meeting on May 7th, we'll be presenting a budget draft for the board to consider. And as Mr. Loach shared with us in our work session, you know that is really kind of hard work to do given all of the uncertainties. But we will do our very best, given the information that we have, to bring forward some budget recommendations for the board to consider. So thank you very much. If we can scroll the menu down just a little, or the agenda, there we go. I wanted to talk just a little bit about graduations, and of course that is top of mind for everyone. And I'll just speak personally for a moment. I absolutely love graduation. It's one of my very favorite things to do, to celebrate 13 years of journey to our students. And this situation with COVID-19 has placed school systems and graduating classes across the country in very difficult situations. As we try to determine the best path forward, certainly we consult on a regular basis with our health professionals. We today got some additional guidance from the State Department of Education. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is the work that's being led by our high school principals in engaging our senior class leaders in discussions, because this is really about them and what their preferences may be for a graduation experience. And so we have an opportunity to speak today, reporting from the first round, the principals were reporting out to us. We will refine that and have representatives from each of the high schools join us in a conference next week as we try to refine that further. That will culminate in a survey that will be shared with all of our graduating seniors before we make any final plans or recommendations for graduation. One of the problems, I think everybody to a person, their first preference would be to have an in-person graduation. There are so many factors that we just simply don't know at this point, and the first priority, of course, is keeping everyone safe. And one of the big challenges with an in-person graduation is it's probably the largest event that we host all year. And if you even think about the federal government's 3 phases, meeting in large groups is in the 3rd phase after there's been a clear period of time of decline. So those are all factors that we will consider before we make any final recommendations about graduation. We announced earlier we would not be able to host any May graduation. So we're talking with our seniors about their preferences. We will engage them in that, and we will have some good information, I hope, as our target anyway, to present at the May 7 board meeting concerning graduation. So I'm going to pause there. We've shared a lot of different information on lots of different aspects of our operation. Again, thank you to all of our staff who've done a remarkable job at creating pathways where there were none before. And so I'm extremely proud of our people. So I'm going to pause here and see if any board members have any questions or comments in regard to the information that's been presented so far.
I have a question, Dr. Cox. How will teacher tenure be affected by what's happened this year?
It really the recommendations will be made as typical. I don't know, Mr. Smith, do you want to take that question?
Yes, I'll be glad to. We are going to continue just like we have in the past. We are going. Most of the work that has been done prior to the closing of the schools. So most of the people know the expectations of what need to be turned in. They have got the information to me. I have been through that and have proved it. And so now it's ready to present to you all. So to answer your question in short, it really hasn't changed very much.
That's good news. Sometime when it's appropriate, I'd like to see that list, please.
Yes, sir. I'll send that to you. You'll get it in the next few minutes.
I actually have a question along that same line, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know a portion of that tenure is certain grades or certain, state ratings and things. So since some of that will not be happening this year, what will happen with that? Will they factor that in, or just have to wait for somebody at the state to decide?
Now, what happens with that? For folks to get tenure, it's based on the 2018, 19, 17, 18 years, not the current year. So that's the reason it's always good to wait. If you jump in too quickly and then the numbers are not right, then it doesn't work out for them to receive tenure. So using the data that we use, we can confirm whether or not they meet those requirements.
Okay, I guess what I mean is like the coming up years, because someone at some point they'll be using the 1920 years numbers. Will that be? I know it has never happened before, but I mean, will that be something the state will have to decide on, or is that something our local policy will have to look at?
No, that's something the state will decide on. And my understanding is that probably what's going to happen, so that people receive their level of effectiveness scores, there's a good chance they'll revert back to the 18-19 year. So let's just say a teacher was a level 4, which means they would receive 10 professional development points for those toward their license. Then if they reverted back to that, then they would receive that same score of 4 for this 1920 school year.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Well, and I would hope that the state would do the same thing for the teachers they've done for the students and not let them go down in that calculation. Only let them improve. I know we have no control over that, and that's a very good question, Mr. Iverson.
Mr. Spivey, too, just to kind of go back on some history, when we had the testing concerns that happened a couple of years ago, that's what the state did, is they weighed on the favor of the teacher and making sure that their high score would be based on their body of work. So it was looked at that way.
I can just say that the state department has been very good at being flexible and not with a guiding principle of no one being harmed because of the COVID-19. Does anyone else have any further questions or comments? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I think we're just,
Dr. Cox.
Yes.
1 minute. For not being on the remote learning. Is that correct? Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a second to echo Dr. Cox's sentiments. Very proud of the way we've been able to provide meals to our students, and I know we have a pretty good crowd online. So for everyone that participated, thank you very much. I've had more comments and more feedback on that than I guess anything since I've been here. The other thing is we'll review the dates again that we talked about earlier. May the 7th. 4 o'clock and 6:30. Everyone's still good with that. That'll be our next meeting. Keeping in mind, during this time we could always have a special call meeting, or we could change this if something unforeseen happens. Anyone with any issues? Hearing none, I'll turn the meeting back over to Dr. Cox, and we will proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. As we continue under unfinished business, we have the issues of Bluff City Middle School property and the report on the school the properties. And so I'm going to ask Mr. Hull to provide updates on those two issues for the board's information.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. The Bluff City Middle School has been put out for bids. I believe the notice is on the school system website if you want to look at that. They will be opening the bids on April the 28th. So we will be following through on that. The next one, I've got the paperwork basically done on that. It takes a little while to get all that put together, and then the purchasing office is, they're working from home, and so they're not at full speed. I guess I'm not either, but anyway, the next one will be the Holston Ball Field property, and then probably after that, Holston View. I'm having to have some deed work done there, but we'll be getting all those submitted. But I just wanted to bring you up to date that we did get a survey on that Bluff City Middle School property, and it is up for bids. So we'll know after the 28th how that went.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Hall? Okay, if not, the next item on the agenda under unfinished business is the consideration of policies for adoption on second reading. These are all ones that were passed at the previous meeting on first reading, and the policies listed as A through G, beginning with emergency preparedness, and the last one is alternative credit options. I would suggest if everyone if no one has any questions, someone could make a motion to adopt the policies in mass or in batch. So,
Dr. Cox, I do have a question on that instructional program.
Okay, you're referring to policy 4.100.
Yes.
Okay, and so if we could, Ms. Nate, would you highlight that policy on the screen?
And this is a policy that we've used for how long? How long has this been in effect?
I can't answer how long it's been. This is it's an update based on the recommendations of TSBA, so I don't know how to answer the question.
Well, if this applies to our instructional program, I'd like to know really who wrote this this policy. There are 11 instructional goals for students. I see one truly academic goal. The rest of this to acquire knowledge and attitude necessary to achieve good physical and mental health, function as a self-directed person, to develop capacity for change through arts, humanities, scientific processes, to know the principles involved in making moral and ethical choices, to develop basic skills. I would hope to do more than basic skills in reading, writing, computation, spelling, speaking, problem solving, to develop a positive attitude towards lifelong learning, to identify personal talents, acquire knowledge, to develop skills in management of personal and public resources, act in a responsible manner, to learn the rights and responsibilities of students, of the community, etc., to learn to respect it. Those are social, emotional goals, I don't think, that can be measured or sustained or attainable. I'm surprised that this is our.
So to answer your question, this is a new policy. it's recommended by TSBA. This King has reminded me. But Mr. Jones, perhaps you can help. I'm thinking this may have been the merger of other policies. Do you remember?
It was the merger and it came from TSBA for the divisions.
Well, I think it needs to be revised for Sullivan County. I find this unacceptable.
What portions would you change, Ms. Thomas? And to answer your question, if you look at the legal references where it came from, it looks like part of it is TSBA and the other part would be our Congress. It would be the United States Congress because it's 42 USC A. That would be United States Code annotated section 200E et sec, which would refer to the whole policy. So that's where TSBA appears to be getting it from if you look on page 2 of the legal references.
Well, do you see this as apropos to instructional programs for academics? I don't see any way that we can measure or obtain these things. We have nothing. We have very little control over that.
Well, if you assume that policies' goals are only to measure results, then I agree with your conclusion. But I think a lot of times policies are aspirational, and the way that these goals have been written, there is not a requirement of measurement. I would think that would relate more to procedure or assessment, which is what our qualified and trained teachers are able to do every day.
And aren't many of these reflected in our mission statement?
I would certainly hope so.
Well, seems like a lot of verbiage. We want to encourage lifelong learners, but this is, I just find this unacceptable.
Okay, again, these policies were previously approved on first reading. Policies that are listed as A through G. Does anyone have any further comment on any of the policies listed for second reading? Okay.
And so the only academic goal in here is number 5 for our instructional program. I feel like our main objective in our schools are our academics, and if they develop these skills to do this, all these other things hopefully are going to fall into place, as I think they have for generations. I think our main focus is academics, so I just think this is overkill on the rest of this.
I guess I'd like to make one small motion. Obviously, Ms. Thomas is very passionate about this, so could we possibly put this off until next month and let her come back with a proposal of how to change it or look at it again? Because if it's nothing that has to go through, it's obviously a new policy. We could just give it a little bit of time and then hold it until next month.
And we don't necessarily have to adopt everything TSBA, comes up with. We need to have things specific to our county. I would hope we could come up with something better than this.
I'm confused. I thought this was on second reading, so this is not, while it may be new, we've known about this for at least 6 weeks. So if you have a proposal, then I would like to hear it. Am I incorrect in that, Dr. Cox or Mr. Hull? If I am, I understand Mr. Iverson's statement, but otherwise, this is on second reading. Nobody objected or made a statement the first reading.
Well, no, I agree. Most of the time we come through first readings and we say any comments and it just blows right through, and that's fine. I get it, and it gives us time to take a look at it and come back. But since she has come back and has some concerns, I guess I am making a motion that we table this one until the next meeting and give her time to come back with something different, or at least input.
Okay, we have a motion to table this particular.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion on? Hearing none, let's call the question.
Mr. Iverson?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Spivey?
No.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
No.
Mr. Hughes?
No. So now we have the question ready to be called for the regular vote. Do I hear a motion? We have a recommendation. I'll make the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Jones. Further discussion?
Yeah, question. What motion are you making? Because the recommendation is putting them all together at one thing.
That's the motion.
Okay, so you're putting all the ones
Yes.
for the second reading all together. Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? Call the question.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Spivey?
Yes.
Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes.
Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Iverson?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us then to new business, and the first item under new business is the ELA textbook adoption. And I wanted to say, again, I want to express a great deal of appreciation for all of our teachers, our principals, and leaders who have worked very hard to examine the materials and to bring forward a recommendation this evening. And I'm particularly proud that we've had such high teacher involvement in this. And so we want to show that this evening by involving teachers who are going to tell us a little bit about the process that was used and the recommendations and why they are making the recommendations that they're making. So I'm going to turn it over to our instructional folks.
Karen, we're ready for the next slide. Thank you. In December, the board approved the English Language Arts Textbook Committee, and Tennessee Code Annotated, it talks there and frames for us exactly who should serve on that committee, to include a parent with children enrolled at each grade band. So you will see there a list of people who are dedicated and gave of their own time and who have really stepped up to advocate for children. And I couldn't honor them any more than I do. So you'll see there the list that you approved in December of elementary school representatives and the parent, middle school representatives, and high school representatives. So I pulled the TCA 49622. There's a series of laws under that. And so the one that applies most directly to our local board, I just thought I would frame this, is the local board is authorized and required to adopt from the list of textbooks and materials listed for adoption by the Tennessee Textbook Commission. They shall appoint review committees to review the textbooks, and they shall make their adoption upon recommendations of such committees. Immediately at the completion of the adoption process, the director shall forward a copy of the recorded adoption to the Commissioner of Education. So that's where we enter at this point. Our process and timeline, we are very careful to review law and know law and follow directly to the letter of the law because we want to do things right and well. So in December, that's where you approve the committee. Also in December, we brought them together, and these are the list of things that we went through with them. So they received the rubrics of the curriculum. They received a list of who was on the approved list. They took an oath that said they have no ties to any kind of curriculum or companies. They learned about their responsibilities, and we marked their future dates. So from December to February, they received curriculum samples at their schools. They brought in teachers after school hours and at different times, and they listened to input of teachers in their schools, and then they brought that back to the table in February. They narrowed the selection of curriculum options provided by the state down to a few vendors where they could learn more deeply about the options. On February, sorry, I'm at home and there's dogs. On February 28th, the vendors came in to present the curriculum to the committees, and then the committees collectively, by grade band, charted the pros and cons of each curriculum. And then February 28th to a couple of weeks ago, they entered their votes into a Google form, and their vote was unanimous across each grade band. K through 5 unanimously voted for Amplify. 6 through 8 unanimously voted for Amplify, and high school unanimously voted for Pearson. So now you get to hear the most beautiful part of the whole time is the voice of the teachers and leaders. And there are some teachers here that represent people on the textbook committee and some teachers who have just been in the trenches for a few years. There's a blend. And you're going to get to hear from their voice and why they selected. And we appreciate K through 12 people coming to the table.
The Urban Literacy Summit was held in Nashville in March, and I felt very fortunate to get to attend. Governor Lee was there to speak, and former First Lady Laura Bush spoke to us virtually. It was stated that falling behind in early foundational years makes success in education, career, and life much harder. SCORE, which is the State Collaborative on Reforming Education, did research to understand literacy issues and make recommendations. Based on the research, they learned about the science of reading. Basically, this is reading equals decoding times language comprehension. Well, that is the whole philosophy behind CKLA. The research showed that we need to use high-quality instructional materials which have two components. We need to have systematic, explicit approach to teaching foundational skills to decode words. That's our skills section. And we also need intentional opportunities for students to build knowledge through complex, meaningful text. That's our listening and learning. Among the speakers at the summit were the House and Senate chairman of education committees. They explained to us that there's a bill currently in legislation that will require all districts to teach reading based on the science of how children learn to read. Sullivan County was given as an example of a school system who is already doing this. Printed in the booklet from the summit is this quote: Sullivan County Schools saw each of its 11 elementary schools meet or exceed student growth expectations. I'm very proud of this, and with CKLA, Sullivan County is leading the way in Tennessee. Next slide.
And also following up on a lot of what was on the previous slide, this slide talks about the two major components of Amplify's core knowledge, language, arts. And when I have to think about those two major components, I look at that knowledge building strand that we work with, and the text in that is so rigorous. Not only is it the rich text that you're offering to these students or that you're putting there before them, they are also learning vocabulary that is well beyond their years. They can use that vocabulary to retell and to compare and contrast. They can use that vocabulary to write. So that whole comprehension strand, or the listening and learning strand, I feel that major component has to be the rich text that's there for you. And when I look at the skills strand and try to think of a major component in it, I'll just stand in awe at the systematic way that we teach those skills to those students. It makes so much sense to these smaller elementary students when they are taught in this systematic way. And they can recall these skills, they can recall the phonemic rules, they understand why a word may not be sounded out the way that it should be, or looks like it should be, because they've been taught really the science of how to do that. And I just really have saw my students in this remote learning exhibit what I have taught them in the classroom. Because yes, I may be there to give them a video lesson or something like that, but they're technically in their home away from me. And they are exhibiting and excelling in the actual review of what we're giving them. So I feel like I have embedded some strategies in them and gave them the background knowledge that they need to succeed. Thank you.
Hi, Beth and Michelle have made some great points and explained the program a little bit about the different parts. There's a skills part, and then there's a listening and learning part. And with the skills part, I teach first grade, and since the adoption, I've seen students of all academic levels demonstrate success in their reading ability. This program does an excellent job of providing all students with a strong foundation of reading, giving the skills to build on and help students become better readers. And then the students that don't quite have the skills, there's a remediation guide that's part of this program that we can use in RTI. And those lower tier students in tier 3, over the past 3 years, we've been able to use that program to help lift and fill in gaps, learning gaps from these students. And by the winter, we have seen like a 50% growth in moving students from, say, tier 3 to tier 2, or tier 2 to tier 1, which is moving completely out of RTI. And following students in the second and third grades, they remain on grade level and haven't regressed back to RTI. So we never we've never had this level of success before in a program, and I've been teaching in Sullivan County for 13 years. The listening and learning component that was discussed prior, students enjoy the topics being taught in CKLA. The listening and learning, they extend their own learning by going to the library and checking out books from the library on the topics we're teaching, like habitats and space and ancient civilizations. They're also excited to share the extra knowledge they've learned with their classmates. And so CKLA has inspired my students to be independent learners, as well to explore the world outside of Sullivan County. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Brittany Maines, and I teach 4th grade ELA at Indian Springs Elementary. And I wanted to talk to you all just a minute about how my reading instruction has evolved. So I've taught 4th grade ELA for 15 years. So when I started teaching ELA, I used the basal that was provided. You know, I felt good about it. It was all there for me. And then as I got more comfortable and came to the realization of what the kids could do, I realized that they could do more. So the last several years, I've been using things that basically I've created or borrowed or whatever. So I felt like that was working. You know, I could tell my students were growing and my test scores were decent. So, you know, I thought it was working. So when I was told that, you know, we're implementing something else, you must do it, I automatically kind of hesitated. And I was thinking, oh, why change when I like what I'm doing, my kids seem to like what I'm doing. But this past year, I implemented it for the first time. I didn't get to see it the whole way through because of COVID. But what I noticed was all the time I was spending creating these activities, these lessons, finding the articles, finding the literature, all of that time is being used now to better get to know my students, scaffolding the material. I'm not having to recreate what is already done for me. So I'm really happy with CKLA because of that. It's good stuff. It's laid out for us. It's not too much fluff. When you find out the big box, I call them big box curriculums, they have so much stuff that you're picking and choosing what to do. So CKLA, I feel like, is very streamlined. The word study, the actual topic of whatever you're learning, the vocabulary, it's all in one grammar. It's all together, and that was something that was definitely missing whenever I was creating my own thing, is that it was way more segmented. So in addition to that, when I started learning about the science of reading that a couple other ladies have mentioned, I thought, oh my goodness, Sullivan County is ahead of the game. And that made me really proud, and that made me really confident in what we're doing.
Hi, I'm Lisa Daly, and I teach first grade at Rock Springs Elementary. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Brittany said, but I'm going to be focusing on engaging with our families. And one of the perks to CKLA is that the domains for listening and learning and the units for skills contain family letters that we can provide examples of ways for caregivers that they can help their child at home and build on the content their child is learning in their classroom. We've also created a Peek at the Week, which is a newsletter for families that explains the specific skills and content their child will be learning that week, so it makes it easier for them to focus and help their child. Given that we have high quality instructional materials with CKLA, it makes it easier for us to create other resources for parents to help engage them. We're not spending time finding resources because we have those provided for us already. So this year, my team and I created a YouTube channel. It's called the First Grade Boxes. And we provide families with an inside look of what their children are learning in their classrooms and to create content conversation starters. And we are so thankful that we had already started that this year because it has made our platform for virtual learning so much easier. And even our students are engaged with this because they have started creating their own YouTube channels to teach others about what they have been learning. So the students are taking ownership of their learning and they're doing a great job with it. Thank you.
So my main takeaway from this curriculum is that students are meeting very high expectations. Out of the various curriculums that we looked at from the approved state list and the Ed Reports website, this curriculum, Amplify, had the most high-quality text and tasks for students. Through this curriculum, students are exposed to a wide variety of diverse topics. They are able to read, understand, write about, and discuss these difficult and new concepts. The writings and discussions that we're having around these topics are well above what we have historically expected of elementary students, and this has led to more growth for our students, in my opinion. Thank you. I'll keep mine short because I basically agree with what all the other elementary teachers have said.
So I'm Kathy Nestor, and I want to kind of sum this up by showing you an example of what a student can do. And I want to start with just a little bit of backstory on this student. This is from a little girl who came to our school when she was 7. She had actually turned 7 in July. She had lived a good portion of her years up to this point in her car with her mother in the streets of Nashville. She had never been to church. She had never been to school. She had never been in any large public social kind of setting. She didn't know how to be a student. She didn't know how to be a little girl in school. And so she was just enamored by everything. She could not read. She could not even write her name. And this little girl came to us seeking to go to school. She had been placed in the guardianship of her aunt and uncle. Actually, it's a great aunt and uncle. And we had to determine where to start her in school. You know, years ago, I taught kindergarten for a long, long time. And Years ago, if a student had come to us and was more than 7 years old, there would have been no discussion. We'd have put her in second grade and we'd have done the best we could to help her catch up. But with this program, the most marked difference in the curricular approach can be really seen from the get-go in kindergarten. It is an extremely different approach, very systematic, very prescriptive in the way students are taught the literal code of the English language. Without that foundation, students are always going to be playing catch-up because it is not intuitive to pick up on the English code. The English language is difficult to learn to read. There are way more phonemic sounds than there were letters, and we just felt strongly that this little girl needed the benefit of that foundation. So we made a really hard choice, and we did place her in kindergarten. And she soared almost immediately because she came in October, and she came in just at the right time to learn to write her name and start learning the letter sounds. And so by the end of kindergarten, she was reading 3-letter words, and she was starting to decode blends. And by the end of first grade, you can see what she was able to do in this sample. Not only is that better writing than we had ever seen before in first grade, this was a year of pivotal turnaround for the first grade students because these kids had come through PKLA as their kindergarten foundation. The rest before them had not. But all writing needs a central theme and some focused details. That's what makes writing worth reading. And you can see by this that she had already started to grasp that, and she was able to demonstrate it. This little girl is still with us, and she is nearly exclusively an A student. She rarely makes less than an A. And we are so proud of her. And she just showed us what a great program, coupled with teacher expertise and the magical flair that teachers are able to put into what they do, will do for a student. You know, it is exactly what Brittany Moons was saying. The program is there, and the teachers are trained in how to deliver great instructional material. But they are not necessarily trained in writing curriculum. So if you give them a great program that does what it's supposed to do, they can take that and make magic. And that's exactly what I feel like happened for this little girl. So I wanted to leave that picture with you so that you could see a direct impact. There are a lot of success stories out there. This one really stands to our mind because of the different situations she came to us in and the fact that she really truly went from nothing to this in a year's time, in just a little over a year's time. And so we're very proud of her.
So why did, I can't see the slide. So why did the committee unanimously come to the decision to vote for Amplify? It is because of the high-level quality texts that are available for teachers to use to help teach that background knowledge and to build on.
Ms. Reynolds, I think you have muted yourself.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So the children are very interested in the topics that are in the knowledge strand, from insects to farms to plants to the human body. And the knowledge strands build from year to year. So every year they are learning a little bit more about a topic, and they're asking questions about the topics. They're going to the library and checking out books on the topics, and they're just digging deeper into all of the topics that are discussed in class. The other part of Amplify is the skills strand, and with that, it's a systematic approach. And with the Amplify curriculum, they are offering a huge library of online resources. They have a sound library for foundational teachers in kindergarten and first to refer to make sure that the sounds are being taught correctly. They have an Ask CKLA expert feature, which you can go online and ask them any type of question. They have vocabulary applications. They have audio books and ebooks that would be very helpful for times like now when we're having to do distance learning, and also for in-class instruction. So as you can see, Amplify is a curriculum that not only is teaching skills to kids to help them learn to read and write, but it's a curriculum that will help them with critical thinking, so it can educate the whole child and help them be a well-rounded student once they leave our schools.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Stephanie Ray, and I teach 7th grade ELA at Sullivan Gardens, K-8. Can you advance one more screen for me, Karen, please? Okay. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of what the things we really like about Amplify are, I want to kind of talk to you about the report that we all looked at on edreports.org. And if you'll go back to that previous one, Karen, please. This is a summary of how Amplify scored with edreports.org, which is an independent nonprofit organization which reviews K-12 curriculum. And there are 3 categories in which they score a curriculum. One is text quality, one is building knowledge, and usability rating is the third one. If you will notice, for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, all 3 grade levels scored in the green, according to EdReport's analysis. On the first category, which is text quality, that includes high-quality texts. They're central to the focus of the lessons. They're aligned with our Tennessee state standards. They include tasks and questions that are grounded in evidence. And if you'll notice, 6th grade scored 36 out of 36 possible points. 7th was 34 out of 36. And 8th grade was 36 out of 36. In the second category, building knowledge, which talks about how we support building students' knowledge with text, vocabulary, and tasks through repeated practice with complex texts, and the building of key vocabulary throughout and across texts. If you will notice, 6th grade scored 32 out of 32, 7th grade scored 32 out of 32, and 8th grade scored 32 out of 32. So that was a perfect scored category for building knowledge. Of course, all of the curriculum is aligned with our Tennessee state standards, meets expectations in all 3 grade levels. The usability rating, this is the use and design of the materials. They facilitate students' learning. They promote effective lesson structure and planning, and they support a multiple range of learners, which Kelly's going to talk about when she talks about the second portion of this. Again, 6th grade was a 32 out of 34, 7th grade was 32 out of 34, and 8th grade was also 32 out of 34. So as you can see from this summary, Amplify scored very high in all 3 categories. And if anybody's interested, I would really encourage you to go out and look at EdReports, because it breaks it down into such. I just printed off the 7th grade packet, and even front and back printed, it was about 1/4 of an inch thick. So they really break down just exactly how this curriculum addresses all 3 of those categories. Karen, can you? I'm sorry, sir, go ahead. Okay. The rest of my slide is talking about the things that I really like about Amplify. It's an extension of what students have been using in grades K through 5. And this is the first year I've taught 7th grade ELA. Prior to this, I have taught 6th grade ELA for several years. Students who come and transition to middle school, it is a huge transition for our students. And a lot of students are scared and they're going to a new building. Everything's very different for them. And having them be able to be familiar and comfortable with the protocols and procedures that they have kind of used in K through 5 would be a great service to them. That continuity will help them feel more confident, and more confident students are more successful students. The other thing I like about Amplify is it's very engaging, which is super important with the middle school students, because if they're not interested in what you're doing, then you're not going to get them motivated to learn anything. The combination of a digital and paper-based curriculum is appealing to students and to teachers. I was thinking about this after I'd done this slide, and I thought, well, you know, there are certain teachers who really like digital and some like paper, and the combination of both of those is appealing to both groups. The texts are rich, they're relevant, they're interesting to students. The curriculum incorporates whole group, small group, or collaboration, and individual work. And it's got a very interesting differentiation component, which Kelly is going to talk to you in just a moment about. Amplify provides a variety of materials that will help students rise. There are daily vocabulary activities, which vocabulary is super important with ELA. Grammar activities, which a lot of our teachers are really happy to see. Strong, high-interest quality texts that include both classic and modern literature. And informational texts. There are daily opportunities for quality reading and writing. Writing is such an important component as well as reading, and some of the graphic organizers for writing are scaffolded in such a way that are just really supportive of all learners, and Chad Smolder is going to talk a little bit about that as well. And there's an online digital library, which I am absolutely in love with, which he is also going to talk to you a little more about in the presentation. Thank you.
And I'm Kelly McKinney. I teach 8th grade language arts at Sullivan East Middle. And I pulled out some information here about the universal differentiation that Amplify offers. And we really like this. This is something for middle school that I was really excited about when we started seeing this program. And the big thing we start with is when you're in class and when you're teaching, students are all working from that same rich, interesting text that Stephanie was just talking about. We're all there together. We're getting that core content. We're learning that background knowledge. But when they go to independently read or independently write, we know that we have students that are going to struggle with these amazing texts. And it gives us as teachers the opportunity to really pinpoint for that student, this kid's going to have trouble here. What options do I have? And it gives some really neat options for us. I kind of put up here, when they go to independently read, it may just give them a little preview of the text. They get a couple sentence blurb about what they're getting ready to read. They get that framework in their mind so that then when they read that text, the details can fill in and their comprehension level goes up. They might go home and have fewer questions to answer on their own. The writing, and Stephanie mentioned how important writing is, and something we work so hard on in middle school, and we have lots of options. I kind of listed them down there. If they need just a little support, maybe they get a sentence starter. Or a moderate support, a kid that's going to struggle a little bit more. Maybe they get a guiding statement. They are still working from that same text. They are still answering that same question. We're still building that same knowledge, but we give them a hint and say, hey, maybe you want to think about this. And we get them pointed in the right direction. For our more substantial or ELL students, they may get a quote from the text, really help them pinpoint what section of that text they need to be working from. And then we all love the fact that we have challenge options. Those kids that are ready to go beyond where we are, that option is there and we can push them. So they're going to answer the question and then they're going to have an extension, some other critical thinking opportunity. So I think that's great that we don't just build in supports, but we also build in something that's right there at our fingertips to push our kids on a little bit more. Also love that it's not set it and forget it. You don't take your kids and go, well, this kid needs to be in this bucket and the kid's over here. It's an assignment by assignment thing. So I've got a kid that's a great reader. they don't need any support, but maybe I know when they go home they're going to struggle, and I can give them a light support, a sentence starter, a little confidence to work them toward being that exceptional writer that I need them to be. So it's something we really liked. On that next slide, I just pulled out an example. Maybe I added those after they went to Karen. It's okay. There's some examples. I'll look at mine. Just of the different levels, and then there was another little slide that showed how they get moved around. It's really good. I think everything I said there.
You're good, Kelly. It's all right.
It's good. It's all good. Really, they were just examples of everything that's on that first slide. So it's all good. So Chad can pick up with the other exciting things we have there.
So Amplify is broken into 6 high-interest primary units, and you can see on the bulleted list there. Oh, sorry, I'm Chad Smelser. I teach 7th grade at North Middle School. Each unit is on average about 27 lessons, but it's broken into either somewhere between 3 and 7 subunits, and it's usually about 4 and 5 subunits. The reason that's important is because, and we've seen with some of the curriculum we've had in the past, this gives our students smaller chunks and focused areas instead of having really long drawn out units that sometimes they get bored with. And we teach middle school, so we teach a very interesting and odd time of their lives, and most of us remember our own middle school experiences as well. One of the things I really want to focus on, and I screenshotted one of these subunits and the lessons there, is that Amplify is very visually appealing. Not only is the curriculum high quality, but it's also really, really good looking, which is, I think, important because when we had our meetings and they were presenting this, I know Trevor Rumsey from Sullivan, he said, it looks like a graphic designer designed this program. So I think it's really good because we need to meet our students where they are, and if we can engage our students visually just from the get-go, I think it's going to be very helpful because when we have our students drift, and once we lose their attention, sometimes it's hard to get it back. This lesson I screenshotted. I love the visuals here, and I love the title of it. It's the most disgusting food you've ever eaten. If that doesn't engage a middle school student, I'm not sure what will be. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a breakdown of the units for 6th grade. As you can see, again, the visuals, these are just screenshots from Amplify's website. The same thing that the students would see. But they're broken into these units. We see a doll and the narrative, mysteries and investigations, the chocolate collection, which I know that a lot of the people on the committee have looked over and really are excited about that one because of the content included. The Greeks, which is going to be great tying in with the current 6th grade social studies curriculum, and then the Titanic collection, and one more I can't see offhand. I'm going to look online really quickly. And that last one, the Summer of the Mariposas. On the next slide, we see 7th grade curriculum. This one we have Red Scarf Girl and narrative, character and conflict, brain science, poetry and Poe, the Frida and Diego collection, and also the Gold Rush collection. So what I like about these, and you can really see it in this one, it's very diverse. You can see in the top left corner some of the script that's written there. So it's in an Eastern Asian language. We have an African American. Then we see one that we have brain science. We go to everyone's favorite, Edgar Allan Poe. We have art curriculum down in the bottom corner, and then something we haven't seen a lot of with the Western collection and the Gold Rush. Go to the 8th grade on the next slide. This is the 8th grade's units. We have perspectives and narrative. Liberty and equality, which is going to tie in really well with the 8th grade social studies standards, which you can see Frederick Douglass there. Science and science fiction, Romeo and Juliet. Let's see really quickly. 8E is the Holocaust, which every year our students seem to very excited about Holocaust and are very interested in what's going on in that time of history. And then the space race collection, which I know a lot of us love anything to do with outer space. Go to the next slide. There's also 3 additional units that are meant to supplement the primary units. As you can see there, all 3 grade levels have a writing, a grammar, and a poetry in America. The 6th grade writing is for beginning writers, 7th grade is for intermediate, and 8th grade is advanced. Again, you can see the grammar lessons there. Each grade has 35 grammar lessons built in, which is great for a reading curriculum to have that built in with it. And then each grade level has somewhere between 6 and 9 levels for American poetry to tie into our own country. Next slide, please. Lastly, we have included the adoption of Amplify as their online library. I know that Robin had mentioned the students using Myon. And what I think about this is like Myon for middle school students. The books and selections are phenomenal. There's more than 650 books available, both fiction and nonfiction. They include classic titles, contemporary titles. I even listed a few that some of my teachers I know have loved, such as To Kill a Mockingbird, The Outsiders, The Giver, all of the Chronicles of Narnia books, even current books such as Hidden Figures, which is was I think for a Best Picture award for one of the movies made about it. From the last few years. We have titles spanning nearly 200 years, going back all the way, I believe it was 1818 was the earliest book, and that was Frankenstein. You can see some of the categories on the screen at the bottom. It's broken up into genres so kids can find kind of the books that they're looking for. One of the problems that we've had with students reading in the past is not that they didn't like reading, it's that they didn't know they liked reading. And so if we can find a way to engage students in things that they're interested in, these kids have this access to them anywhere they want to at any time, and they can just read. And I think we'll see a large rise in students reading for their own pleasure and not just because they have to. Next slide, let me show you some of the books that are listed there in the different categories. Again, as I said, there's a lot of award winners. If you can see the gold circle on those are all award-winning books. We have spooky stories like Dracula and Frankenstein. Neil Gaiman has some books on here like Coraline. You see action adventure, things like Huck Finn, Around the World in 80 Days. And this is just one section. Go to the next slide. We have historical fiction, literary classics. We see things like Anne of Green Gables, award winners. All of that entire section were Newbery and other type of award winners. We also have biographies. We have a large amount of students who like to read about nonfiction categories. So it's not just fiction, and we're not just hampering these kids with, the books that we like, but we have so many things to choose from. One more slide, please. I think it's the last one. Nope, never mind. That was all I have. All right. That was all I was going to talk with, so we'll leave that to the next person. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chad. Just very quickly, not to belabor, I have a few points on here. And I think, Karen, maybe I had updated that slide after you had posted. But very quickly, one of the first things from an administrative standpoint that we were looking at and that we continue to look at includes that this program, Amplify, certainly continues to raise the bar, which is what we have been about in Sullivan County for quite some time. Amplify puts in the hands of our teachers high-quality materials that allows for equitability across our district. So this allows us to ensure that every single student in every single classroom in every single school all across Sullivan County has access to the same high-quality text, tasks, and questions each day in their English classrooms. It also allows for a continuity and progression of learning K-8, which is not something that we have been doing, we've been trying to do, but this certainly solidifies that and to basically get to that third point, which is to ensure that the momentum that our elementary schools have worked so hard to create in terms of literacy development, we're going to be able to continue that now into the middle school years. For example, students coming into 6th grade, they're not only ready for, but they now expect access to high quality, rigorous text, as well as complex questions and tasks. This was the first year that we saw that at the middle school level. It wasn't about, having to try to change something that we were doing or try to get students used to more rigorous text or more complex tasks and questions. They come in expecting it because of the work of our elementary schools. So having this continuity and progression with Amplify K-8 is going to allow that to continue. And then a final point administratively is, and I think several of our teachers have mentioned it, with the pandemic and with everything that's going on, we certainly have no idea, with school starting, when is it going to start? Are there going to be interruptions throughout? The way that Amplify has set up the curriculum certainly helps us to ensure that there will be continuity, whether we are in person in our classrooms or whether we are trying to teach these units and the different tasks and things virtually. Amplify certainly provides platforms to do both. Dr. Fields?
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I appreciate that. I appreciate Ms. Ray and Ms. McKinney, Mr. Smelser, Dr. Davis. I'm not going to belabor this any either. I am blessed to be in a middle school where we share a building with elementary schools. So I get to spend a lot of time with the elementary school students, passing in the cafeteria in different places. And one of the things that is amazing is the excitement that I have seen with the elementary teachers trickling into our school. Our teachers have begun to hear about CKLA and Amplify and that trickle-down excitement that I've been able to see. So I wanted to know what the excitement was about. And after I've heard from teachers, I've heard from several of our teachers, the teachers that are on the textbook committee, this slide just includes some of the things that really excited me about it. I won't sit here and read the slide to you, but after investigating, looking into it, hearing from the teachers, I'm about as excited about this as I am Ridgewood Barbecue reopening. This is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for our middle school students to start getting an amazing ELA experience.
Hi, this is Brent Palmer, and I just want to say our high school group had a great discussion dealing with all this curriculum and textbook decision making, and they've just done a great job. I was so glad to work with them. Dr. Tasha Colley, who is one of our wonderful ELA teachers from Sullivan Central High School, is going to walk you through why the high school team chose Pearson. Dr. Colley?
Thank you, Dr. Palmer. So on this first slide, we see the ED report, like we saw with Amplify for the middle school. So not only did the high school, did Pearson score green on every single criteria in every single grade level, but they also scored a perfect score for all of that criteria. So I think that's pretty powerful and speaks for itself, just the high quality instruction that will be going on using this curriculum. Next slide, please. Is there one before that? Nope. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so first of all, before I get into that, Pearson really focuses on the fact that students will be learning how to develop their own perspective. And so that's why this curriculum is entitled My Perspective. And as students are gaining their own perspective, they also have ownership over the text that they're reading. So we know that the texts are going to be very relatable to the students. And again, that really provides for that student ownership. If they're able to relate to the text, they're going to have that connection. They're going to understand and comprehend that text. And there's going to be, they're going to be able to really retain that information as well. The planning for teachers is incredibly flexible. So one of the criteria that we looked at when choosing a curriculum is for it to be easy for brand new teachers and veteran teachers alike. And this curriculum, and I'll show you this here in just a few seconds, but this curriculum really provides for that flexibility for new and veteran teachers. The learning is incredibly rigorous, and I'm going to lay all of this out for you as well, but we have very high quality text, and the questioning and the writing and the tasks that are asked of students is very rigorous. And so all three of these components really lay down the foundation for Pearson's curriculum. Okay, so I first want to talk about the layout of this whole curriculum here. And I want to begin by looking at how each unit is laid out. Every textbook has, or I guess every grade level has 6 units. But at the high school level, you only need to look at 3 units, and that's going to cover all of your standards for the semester. So a given unit, every unit is thematic and begins with an essential question. These units are designed backwards, so we begin with the end in mind. And so students know from the very beginning, what their goal is as they're reading through all of these texts. And along the way throughout this unit, they're going to be gathering evidence in order to answer that question at the end of the unit. And we do this kind of in three different stages. So the first is with whole group learning. So as a whole classroom, students are reading multiple texts, and then there's going to be some kind of performance task. Oftentimes, it is going to be a writing, some kind of a writing piece. Then we're going to scaffold this a little bit and have small group learning where students are placed in groups, and again, they're going to be reading several different texts and doing some kind of a performance task. And then finally, and I'm really excited about this, there's going to be an independent learning piece for every unit. So students get to choose between 4 to 6 different texts, again, all related to the same unit, to the same theme that we're looking at, and they're going to be able to gather their own evidence to be able to answer that question at the end of the unit. Finally, there's some kind of performance task, often a larger writing assessment or some kind of activity, and then a unit assessment as well. With each unit, there are alternate novel study options, and you can use these novels a couple different ways. You can use a novel just as a supplement piece of text, or you can use it completely in lieu of the smaller texts that are in the textbook. So you have some different options there. Again, flexibility for the teachers, ownership and independence for the student as well. So every text that we read, we're going to look at it a couple different ways, and there are several different activities embedded with those texts. So we'll read the text, and just for basic understanding, basic comprehension, just reading over that first time through, and then we'll have some comprehension questions. We'll go back through and have some close reading time where we really look deeper into the text. We're analyzing the text itself as well as the structure of the text. We're looking at vocabulary, at word study. We're looking at figurative language, at other literary devices, author style. We're looking at grammar and writing embedded within the text. At the high school level, it's hard to spend a whole week or more on one piece of grammar. And really, a lot of this grammar, they've learned since elementary school. And so what is going to be the most effective for them is to really have that grammar and their writing skills embedded within their reading instruction itself. So this curriculum really integrates all of that together, which is really, really powerful. Okay, next slide, please. So what all is included with Pearson's curriculum? As we've heard before, we have both digital access, but also paper copies of just about everything. So we have consumable workbooks for the students, so students are able to write in those books, and we get new consumables every year for the duration of the adoption. So it's going to be really beneficial, and they will be used. They will be used every single year. So students are able to write in the workbook, and that acts as their textbook. So they have all of the text needed in there, all of the space for writing, all the grammar lessons and writing instructions, and so on. Novel choices are included within this adoption, which is, we do not see this with any other company. Other companies, you had to go out and purchase novels additionally, so that's just an extra cost. And the novels are already part of the deal with Pearson, which is really nice, and you don't have to really think about it beyond that. There are plenty of assessments. Of course, assessments are provided for teachers. for every text in every unit, but we also have diagnostic mid-year and end-of-year assessment as well. A lot of this looks like TN Ready, so we're really preparing students for that TN Ready test. But the diagnostic and mid-year assessments are really providing those benchmarks so we can better support our students throughout the course of the semester. Based on student results from these assessments, Pearson provides suggestions of grouping for these students, so we can group students in different ways depending on how they performed on those assessments. And Pearson also provides suggestions for remediation. So if a student shows on their assessment that they really struggled with the basic parts of speech, they suggest to us, maybe you have them watch this video or do this extra work to try to bring them up to speed. On the digital platform, we have everything that we have in paper copy. So we have the online textbook. There's a library of hundreds of books, just like what we saw with Amplify and what we saw with Myon as well. All of that text, you're able to interact with the text. So just like you would pull out your highlighter and highlight a book that you're reading, you can do that on Pearson as well. So you're going to be able to highlight, take notes, annotate the text right there on your computer screen. There's audio for all of the books as well, so that really helps those struggling readers to be able to hear the text as they see it, as they're reading it. There are video intros. There are skills videos for all of those extra little grammar and writing and literary devices that we're teaching. So that's always nice because we know our students get tired of listening to us talk all the time, so they really like to see those little videos of somebody else teaching them something, even if it's just for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you as the teacher can go on and add to that. Everything is editable, which I know every teacher loves. You have some of that autonomy there. You have your own ownership. So every document is editable, but the organization of every unit and every lesson can also be manipulated by the teacher as well. The digital platform completely integrates with Google Classroom. Other companies only synchronize with Google Classroom, but this completely integrates with it. The search engine is also created by ACT. So if students are going on Pearson's website and they're searching for maybe something that they're researching for class, you know that they're going to be getting good, high quality text because this was provided by ACT. So you know it's going to be good stuff that they find. Next slide. And just a couple other odds and ends here. Of course, we've talked about writing this evening. Students who are better readers are going to be better writers and vice versa, so you've got to integrate them, and that's what Pearson did here. Regardless of what units a teacher would teach, they're going to be covering all of the writing modes, so students are going to be very well diverse in the different types of writing. Pearson provides model writing at every score level. So let's say, for instance, a student is provided a writing task. We, as teachers, also have an example essay or an example writing, an example answer at every score level. So they're going to be able to see what a level 1 paper looks like and then what a level 4 paper looks like. And so I think that really helps students see, oh, wait a minute, I'm writing at a level 1 or a level 2. I need to bump it up a little bit. Or they may see, oh, if I just added this piece, if I just added some more vocabulary or worked on my grammar a little bit more, I could get a level 4. So I think it's really helpful for them to see those exemplar pieces. There's an automated essay score, which, is very helpful for teachers, but not just that, it is very helpful for students as well. These automated scores provide instant feedback for students, and it recommends some lessons for remediation for them. So if this automated score catches that a student is really struggling with subject-verb agreement, then they will be given the suggestion for, hey, watch this video or complete this worksheet, or here's some extra work to help you with your subject-verb agreement. Go back, fix that in your essay, and resubmit it. So that instant feedback is really helpful. And of course, we as teachers can go and add to that and to support that later on. There's a plagiarism checker, again, helpful for teachers, but also helpful for students. Sometimes students just don't know that they're plagiarizing, and so that will help out a lot as well. And I forget who mentioned this earlier, but the more support that we're getting from another platform or from another source really allows us time that we can spend with the kids, and we can make those relationships. I know, a lot of times we're so busy editing or grading or looking for plagiarism and reteaching plagiarism or reteaching whatever. And if they can get that little bit of support from the computer program, and it's just given us a little bit of a head start, that's just really nice for us to be able to spend some more quality time with the students. Differentiation is a huge piece that I'm really excited about. There are suggestions of differentiation at the beginning of every story. At the beginning of every story in this textbook, there's a chart that lists the standards that we're going to cover within that story. And it provides suggestions for students who may be a little bit below level and students who are above level. And so it says, if a student is below level and they're not quite here yet, here's some things that you can provide for them before you get started to hopefully bring them up to a level playing field, and then you can begin your instruction. And the same thing for those students who are achieving a little bit higher. They're going to get that extra support from the beginning before you move on. So it really puts everybody on a level playing field from the beginning. All the texts are hand leveled for those struggling readers, so it really provides that differentiation for everybody. The digital text includes summaries, and so that's really helpful, I think, for any reader. I definitely need summaries to read myself, but for especially those struggling readers, it's a lot easier to look at that smaller chunk of text, get an idea really quick of what they're about to read, and then have the full text to get into. And then just some miscellaneous items, and I've mentioned this too, but they're in context grammar and writing lessons, so it's all embedded within the reading itself, because an English classroom is not just reading stories and reading articles, but it's all of it, grammar and writing and everything. There's ACT prep and correlations. Hello, that's huge. All in one textbook, all with one company. That's great to have that provided for us. Of course, it's aligned with Tennessee standards. It's ELL compliant, so all of the text on the digital platform can be translated into many different languages, and I believe that it works with Google Translate as well. And then there's continuing professional development and support. We've already seen great support from our Pearson representative throughout just the past couple of months, but we get that continued support and professional development and help throughout the duration of our adoption. That's all that I have to say. I don't know if any of my high school teachers need to add anything, but that's all that I have to say about Pearson. But it is great, great for students, great for teachers, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to say an additional word of thanks to all of our amazing ELA teachers and our instructional leaders who have worked to evaluate all of these materials, to dig in very deeply, to check into all of this, and to make the recommendation that you've made. And I think how important it is that we have asked our teachers to do such an important job of teaching, and then also to involve our teachers in selecting the tools that they will need to do this work. Literacy is so important, and I just want to say how much I appreciate all of this work and for you to be a part of this presentation. So, Mr. Chairman, we do respectfully make a recommendation to the board to adopt Amplify for our elementary, our middle, and Pearson for our high school.
Thank you for the recommendation. I'll make the motion and I'll look for a second.
I'll second that.
Who's second? I lost you.
That's me.
Mr. Spivey seconds the motion. We'll now have discussion.
I just have one question, actually. I had a couple of parents call me over the last couple of days and say that they had looked at it and they showed about the online, input there for just a couple of days. So when I went to look at that today, I noticed it was only open for 3 days, and that seemed very short. Is that normal that we only allow the input that short, or is it just something happened with this one?
So I believe the period of time when we have been able to typically have people review materials physically is comparable to that time. So, Mr. Miller, would you like to speak to that?
In the past, we have scheduled a time at the warehouse or the service center for the community to come in, and that's typically just 1 day. So actually this here, the 3 days would be much longer than what's usually used.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask how many responses, Dr. McClellan, were received on this review?
We received one person who responded 2 times.
So you had no review from the community at all?
As Mr. Miller said, we normally have about a 2-hour window at Acre Service Center. So normally we have forms there that they can fill out. I contacted the state to see what would be appropriate because of the conditions of the world, and they said that this was a great solution and it was actually, like he said, opened longer, and we sent press releases out to every media outlet.
And last year when we had the social studies adoption and we had that time period at the service center, we only had 10 respondents at that time.
Well, I don't think people were really aware, and I know it's in the paper and I know it's on our website. I felt like it was really difficult to get into. How many curriculums did you look at that were not scripted?
There are several curricula that are on the list. The 2 that they narrowed to are EL, Learning, and Amplify. But I think the teachers that have been implementing the work now for 4 years would tell you that it's no longer scripted. Scripted is a term that would be maybe year 1 when you're trying to learn about it. But now, as we've talked about several times, they know what the curriculum is now, and they're able to add their magic and their professionalism to teach the kids instead of writing all the curriculum. They don't talk about scripted anymore.
Well, that's good. I'm thrilled to see that the reading strategies and word attack skills have worked so well, because the skills part is what was presented to our board 4 or 5 years ago. We all love the accelerated vocabulary skills and all that, but my prayer is that we are compromising on content. I have personally read several of the texts, and just like on the 9th grade expeditionary learning, I think there were 13 presentations of books and poetry, stories and poetry. 11 of those were, I felt like, on social issues, and the projection of, quote, Americans and American culture, I feel like are disparaged. I feel like also religious issues that are presented in a negative light. And I have read this material, and I have great concerns, and I know there are teachers who have had concerns that have felt like their concerns were largely ignored. So there are a lot of social issues, a lot of the biographies that they are being presented with are social justice sorts of things. And I just pray that our teachers and that our literature is bringing our students higher level thinking and true morality. And I am concerned about that because there are a lot of value judgments, and they're spending a lot of time on these social issues that I think lead to confusion, and we know concepts that are out there in our world right now. And this is Sullivan County. This is not New York City or California, and we need to stand for the values that are important to our constituents, our taxpayers, and our culture here. And I just want to pay special attention because I have been disappointed in several of the texts, and I've had those discussions. So I just want us to be very, very aware that it's important that we uphold hope and love for this country and patriotism. Thank you.
Robin, this is Mike. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
When we were presented with the skills, were there not a Google Drive presentation as well?
Yes, sir. I have the original board presentation. I believe it was either 3 or 4 years ago, and it shows that it has not been edited since that time. And the knowledge strand and the listening and learning strand and skills strand were both presented.
That was my recollection. Thank you.
Robin, if you remember our discussion at that time, how I was concerned about how things were presented, especially to our younger students. And I still have those concerns. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I really appreciate the fact that the committees were made up of teachers, parents, and supervisors, and that you all were able to come to a unanimous decision. Initially, I was opposed to CKLA, and the term Pearson makes me cringe sometimes, but this is research-based, it's aligned with standards, it includes things that are very important to reading, like backward design and scaffolding. The growth that was demonstrated and celebrated by the Tennessee Department of Education is something we all should celebrate. And the personal testimonies of the teachers and administrators that we heard tonight, many of whom I know personally, I trust that Ms. Thomas' concerns will be addressed by those good people who were a part of this and will be delivering the implementation of it. So thank you.
And I also want to say thank you to all the teachers and administrators for taking the time out to make that presentation. I know it was long, but you gave us a lot of knowledge that I think if we've been paying attention the past 4 years, it's been out there. I've been to the classrooms, I've seen it in action, and I've been impressed each time. And I've told teachers this in person, but each time I ever run into a Sullivan County teacher or administrator, whether it's them volunteering for something or in the classroom, I'm impressed. And one example I could even point back to years ago is this very curriculum. I met with teachers after I attended classroom presentations from K through 5 at Rock Springs Elementary, and one of the teachers was actually a substitute that day. And even the director of schools at the time didn't know it till after I got to talk to him. And the director of schools didn't sit in that conversation. That was a conversation I had with them one-on-one. I understand your concerns, Ms. Thomas, and I appreciate them. But I too would concur with Mr. Gilmore that I have faith in our teachers. As I said at the last discussion we had about policy 4.100 in the instructional program issue you raised, that they are our community. Our teachers are our citizens. We're one of the largest employers in the county. They are our community. They're who teach our kids. We as school board members don't do that. We set aspirational goals, and our goal is to highly educate them. And I think this material gives them the chance to do that. And I think that as further proof of that would be the evidence given that hadn't been brought back up in 2 hours, but just how they were recognized at the state level as a leader in this field. So thank you, teachers, administrators, and everybody that's worked on this. I really appreciate it.
Anyone else? Then I call the question.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
No.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
I thank you very much. Okay, next, under new business, we have a resolution before you for a school nutrition copier lease agreement, and we respectfully request approval.
You have a recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Motion by Mr. Jones, second by Ms. Thomas. Discussion? Hearing none?
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is request for Perkins budget amendment. This is the second amendment to Perkins, which is the federal career and technical program. We respectfully request approval of this budget amendment.
We have a recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gilmore. Discussion? Hearing none?
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is an amendment for the general purpose school fund budget amendment. And again, we request approval.
We have a recommendation on the floor. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Iverson. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Spivey seconds that motion. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Ireson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Thank you. The final two items under new business are what I mentioned in the work session. These are emergency requests in response to COVID-19 outbreak or pandemic. These are both recommended by the Tennessee School Boards Association in order to give us the necessary flexibilities to move forward. And the first one is the FFCRA leave having to do with granting leave. And so we do recommend its approval. Actually, I'm recommending a two-step process here that because of the time frame that you would approve this on first reading. So it would require two votes, the first of which that I'm recommending is to adopt this on a first reading, and then the second necessary vote, if you're in agreement, would be to adopt the policy 5.3051.
We have a motion to waive the rules. A recommendation to waive the rules. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion.
Have a motion by Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gilmore. Discussion? Hearing none.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas.
Now we have the recommendation.
Mr. Hughes, actually, I'd actually like to ask for unanimous consent instead of going through the whole process, because I think we all want to do what's best.
Okay. You're talking about both policies?
That's correct. Yes.
Very good. So we have a recommendation.
The other one's a resolution.
Hear that, Mark?
Okay, then we can just do it this one then. That's fine.
Okay. So to the original recommendation, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Have
I'll
a motion
second
by
that.
Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Spivey. Discussion. Hearing none.
Mr. Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore.
Yes.
Thank you. And finally, we bring forward for your consideration and recommended approval a resolution for emergency temporary suspension of board policies. These are multiple policies. This is in response to actions taken by the Tennessee State Board of Education pertaining to graduation requirements and grading so that we are able to finish the school year and graduate our students primarily. So before you in the resolution, as I said, it addresses several different policies where our local policies may conflict with the changes that were ordered by the state board. So respectfully, I ask your approval of this resolution.
We have a recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Who made that?
Go ahead and do Matthew. That's fine.
Either one.
Was that Mr. Spivey?
Yes, it doesn't matter.
It was a tie.
I think everybody agrees.
Yeah, this is what I was looking for unanimous consent, but just vote's fine. That's fine.
All right. Who made the second? I had a hard time hearing.
Mr. Spivey did.
Okay. So we have a second. Discussion?
Is there a time deadline on this as far as how long we're suspending policies?
Mrs. Nave, could you open, please, the resolution?
I looked at it, I couldn't remember.
It references in the notes, I don't know about in the resolution, but it references 2019-20 school year. So,
yeah, that's what I believe to be correct. That it impacts this school year only.
So unless there's further changes, it would end at the start of the new school year then.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Anyone else? Hearing none.
Mr. Iverson,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Spivey,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
That concludes the agenda. Once again, I want to thank everyone. I know that we've spent a lot of time together this evening, but it is a culmination of a lot of work that's taken place by a lot of people. I want to thank our staff for all the hard work that's taken place to help our students continue learning through the COVID-19 pandemic, and that we're still continuing. Especially want to thank all of the folks for your dedicated and hard work on the textbook, the ELA text adoption, which was made more difficult because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and you had to work extra hard to get us to this point. So I'm very appreciative. I think everybody will agree we have amazing teachers and amazing dedication to our students. So I'm very appreciative. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. I'd like to express my thanks to everyone who has participated in the meeting today. Very, very impressive presentations. Thanks for all that you do for our students. Seeing no further business before this board, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
One thing, Mr. Hughes.
Go ahead, Mark. You turn this off.
Okay, sorry. Dr. Cox, I see a couple people still that are online that had sent in those questions. Could you at least tell a little bit, just maybe a minute thing of what was said in the work session about the field trips and that it's being looked at TSBA and the comptrollers, and that is actually being worked so that people understand it's being worked?
Sure. What Mr. Iverson is referring to, as we've talked about in many different fronts, because of our operations being disrupted, one of which is we had many students that had planned to go on lots of different field trips, and so I'll have to say this: most every vendor or company has been very good about either working with us to refund or to reschedule or issue credit. Some had just had to be canceled, and so what we've had to do, what we've been able to do, particularly with the more expensive kinds of trips, it's been a combination of parents paying in for those trips and then also fundraising. We have been able to refund monies where it's possible that parents have paid in. One of the things that we have not been able to do is to refund monies that have been raised specifically. So we are working currently with the comptroller's office and with the auditors on some guidance for that. We're hoping that we will get some recommendations for policies from TSBA and also more formal guidance. Just know that that's something that we're working on, and realize that this is we're in unprecedented times, and we will work as hard as we can on behalf of our families to be made whole for these expenditures. So stay tuned.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cox. I appreciate that.
Sure.